It was odd seeing Celia naked on the news when she was 3,000 miles away from me. I mean, it'd be strange to see her censored with those black rectangles covering her breasts and vagina in any news, but definitely even stranger from across the country. My friends at UCLA picked up on it pretty quickly that we were sisters. Merode isn't exactly a common name in America. They all assumed Celia made tons of money. They thought she was so glamorous. These Valley girls were jealous because they thought I had art world cred. But when I talked to Celia on the phone, she said she still barely ate anything because the NEA grant in the Bowman Gallery had fallen through. She didn't mind eating nothing but packets of ramen, though. I told her I ate the same thing at UCLA, and I think that made her feel like she had a normal life. A life where she wasn't famous for something she hated. I didn't tell her that I kinda liked her fame, though. When people knew that she was my sister, it actually got me into parties. At a party in Malibu, I did shots with that guy who played Screech. Just because of the NEA crisis, which is really weird to think about. Celia and I took the express elevator up to the 107th floor of the North Tower. And that shit's fast. I bring some of my collectors up there on a regular basis, so I'm kinda used to it. I looked over at Celia though, and I thought she was gonna be standing in her lunch before we got up there. I could tell she felt her stomach pulling out of her ass. I put my hand on her shoulder and asked, "You all right?" Yeah, she said. Of course she was all right. She was always all right. I didn't want to laugh because I knew she'd get on my ass about being a dick if I did. She kind of stumbled out the doors and into the long hallway that ends at Windows on the World. I walked into the main restaurant, but we weren't eating there. That's just a tourist joint now. We were heading to Cellar in the Sky, this little restaurant inside a restaurant that's very she. They only serve 36 people per night. But I got to the cellar's door, and I realized that Celia wasn't next to me anymore. I turned around and she'd gone 100% tourist on me. She was staring out the windows overlooking Manhattan. Yeah, from up there you can see nearly the entire island, like Chrysler, Empire, a blurry Bronx on the horizon. And she was gawking down at the street a quarter-mile below us. And she said she'd seen the tops of these buildings nearly every day for 7 years, but she'd never actually been up in them. She lifted her head and said, "I should shoot from right here." I patted her back toward Cellar in the Sky, thinking, come on, lady, we need to get to our reservation. That place actually makes it feel like you're in Napa. Kinda. A guy plays Thelonious Monk's Round Midnight on a classical guitar, and white arches curve overhead like you're sitting under a trellis, and this lighting effect beams shadows of grape leaves onto the walls. Celia took it all in and said, "It's kinda cheesy." "Maybe," I said, "but every plate is $90 of cheesy." Celia and I wouldn't say that we came crawling back to each other on hands and knees. No, but she sure as shit made it feel that way. I'd been watching Johnny one week, and all week long he made jokes mentioning Celia. Not great jokes, but it's Johnny fucking Carson. Celia was Johnny's material, like the garbage barge or something. I couldn't believe that. So it started nagging at me. That first night, I just thought it was funny that a nobody like Celia got name-checked by the king of late night. But by the 5th night, I needed to reconsider my sales methods. I asked Kelly if we still had any more of Celia's shit that she hadn't picked up yet. What was this thing that gave Arnie Heacox goosebumps? I ended up slogging to her apartment in the Lower East Side like some lovelorn schmuck. And even then, it was her roommate who finally let me in to see more of these things. I might have begged afterwards, but it wasn't hands and knees. No, it wasn't. So we went to Cellar in the Sky for some celebration. But we needed to discuss what she'd include in her first solo show with me. We needed to put something together fast before her 15 minutes were up. Oh, I know I talk shit about flavors of the month. Sometimes you gotta go with your gut too, though. Like, I hadn't seen the media talk so much about a new artist since Basquiat, or Keith Haring, or fucking Julian Schnabel. Woof. Thank God we still had Keith Haring around. But the fucking newspapers still weren't talking about Celia's art. They only focused on the controversies. It was like the New York Post wanted a cage match between Celia and Pat Robertson. See who'd win. Which way would the country go down? Heaven or hell? To be honest, I'd love to see Celia beat the shit out of Pat Robertson. At the restaurant, the waiter came by and poured 2 glasses of veuve for us. Perfect, it's a celebration. Right after we clinked glasses, the guitarist segued to The Man I Love, and the sommelier walked out of his little wine cave and started singing the damn lyrics. Someday he'll come along, yada yada yada. Celia started laughing, saying, "Oh my God, Patrick, where did you bring me? Is this a Disney ride? Epcot?" She thought the Little Mermaid was going to come out and flop onto the floor. And I told her that mermaid was the second course. She laughed and said mermaid was probably a delicacy for my collectors. I told her, you'd be surprised. One of my wealthiest clients, every fucking day he eats a Spam sandwich with a giant dollop of mayonnaise spread over the meat slab. These Depression-era guys come from a different planet sometimes. The waiter poured a 1989 Grenache Chardonnay. But I don't think Celia ever picked up the glass. She was rapid fire. She said she had 4 films ready in the can. 7 if we included stuff she did in high school. But she said she wasn't sure if they'd be good enough. She said she wasn't some Francesca Woodman Wunderkind or whatever. But there were 4 newer films ready, and she was working on 1 or 2 others with her assistant. After narrowing down how many we'd show and which ones, she said we needed to figure out the best way to present them. They're all silent, so it didn't matter if they played in close proximity to each other. Sound wouldn't overlap. But she wanted heavy drapes to create long, dark, almost pitch-black hallways leading up to each screen. That gallery was right off of the street, so she thought it would be too hard for somebody to fully give themselves to the art when they came in to see it. She wanted people to have a desensitizing little walk, so the films wouldn't be ruined by whatever they'd been thinking about on the street. I finally stopped her and said, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I thought we were showing her photographs, prints from the figure drawing series and whatnot. She tells me she never said that. It's what I assumed. That's possible, she said. That you assumed, but I never said that. God, she can get on my balls. Something like figure drawing is what the newspapers expected, she said. Fuck the newspapers. I told her we weren't in a position to fuck the newspapers. Look, I said, you've only had 1 solo show, and it was the figure drawing series. The group shows that you've been in used the figure drawing series. It's what the collectors know at this point. It's what the collectors want. They've barely gotten to know you. They want the thing that they already know. If we start showing them films, they'll get confused and walk away. She's telling me that's bullshit. How I couldn't sell any of her photographs just months earlier. No, I didn't exactly tell her that I wouldn't waste my time selling them then. But things change fast. I said, now that you're legitimately in the news, now that talk show hosts are mentioning you by name, collectors want what's changing the culture. And I agree with them. This moment of yours is a part of history, whether you like it or not. She got all pissed and said, talk show hosts are joking about me. Oh, I didn't know that Celia Merode couldn't take a joke. She said she refused to go backwards. She wasn't showing the figure drawing series again, just the films. Look, I said, do you want to get down to brass tacks? Collectors don't take films seriously. The big guns, the guys we really want to sell to, they aren't buying films. They don't even really want a photograph. They still want paintings and sculptures. Men's mediums, she called them. I wasn't talking about feminism. I was talking about keeping the lights on. I had to sell 10 photographs to make as much as one painting. I didn't even know what kind of price to put on a film. The only reason that a collector ever bought a film was because he wanted to schmooze his way onto some museum's board by donating it to them. So she said, then let's find those guys. Just work with those assholes. At some point, I said I didn't know if we could do the show anymore. She said she was okay walking. I didn't know who was bluffing more. So fine, whatever. 2 films, I said. And she said just the films. I said I was holding out at 2 films. Nobody does just films. So she stopped to think. We didn't even notice the 3rd course sitting between us. Then she said, okay, you say that films won't sell for as much? If it's the money you care about, you should take a bigger cut. The gallery already did a 50-50 split for each piece sold. It was the normal contract for every artist, at every gallery. Very few artists got better cuts than that simply because if it wasn't for the galleries, the artists would never sell to the best, wealthiest clients. Not many new artists complain when I sell their painting for 26 grand and they take home $13,000. How else could they make that much scratch for one painting? Hawking it in Central Park? Give me a break. Maybe she understood that. You know, it's her who said, you should just take 75% of each sale. I just want to pay the rent and make more films. I'll be fine with 25%. I told her, don't be crazy. And I meant it. I think. Then let's do all films, she insisted. I finished half a glass of wine in one gulp and decided, fine. Sure, I'll take 75%. You know, I still didn't know which one of us was gonna get screwed by this deal.